Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Windy City Chronicle show. I'm your host, Thomas Gibbons. Alongside with me, as previously, is Alex Patt, one of my writers. He also does some work for Cubby Crib, so make sure you go check that out. Does a podcast every week and writes some articles for them as well. Alex, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good. So we decided to jump on a podcast for a little bit. Going to talk the Blackhawks playoff push, and then pitchers and catchers reported this week for the Cubs. So we'll get in a little bit of that, what's going on there so far. Some position players are already there. We'll talk a little bit about Addison Russell and his comments with the media. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Hawks playoff push. Hawks got Columbus tonight. I'm pretty sure they're still just 2 points out of the wild card spot. So, Alex, deadline's coming up. The Hawks are not going to be necessarily buyers because just so they're, it's not like they're fighting for Winnipeg and Nashville at the top of the Central. They're fighting for a wild card spot. They could really, do well for themselves if they miss the playoffs because then they get higher draft capital and, they're currently in like a retool, rebuild just because, of the state of the team and they've already sold off some pieces already, but they got some good returns in guys like Strome and Kajula. So, they're building a nice roster going forward for this year and next year. But Alex, what do you think the Hawks have to do if they want to keep going in this playoff push and jump these teams ahead of them, like Colorado, like Vancouver, and teams behind them like Arizona and Edmonton?
Well, you look at the playoffs and they look really close, but it's not going to be easy. If you do want a legitimate shot, then you're going to have to look at the next, 2-3 weeks. You look at the schedule, you got Columbus tonight, you have Ottawa on Monday, and then you go to Detroit, and then you have Colorado, then Dallas, then Anaheim. You look at Columbus, Ottawa, Detroit, Anaheim, you got to beat those guys, and you got to record some points against Colorado because, they're ahead of you, and Dallas is another division game, so if the Hawks really want a shot here, they need to take the games they need to take, in which they've taken the games they've needed to the past several weeks. The only game they lost was in Boston. Boston is really good, and I think they have like the most home points in the NHL, or at least they're one of the best teams. And then you get into March, and you're going to play LA to start. I mean, you should beat them. And then things get a little tougher because San Jose is really good. And then you got to play Buffalo, who, even though the Hawks destroyed them the last time they played them, they're not a slouch either. Mm-hmm. Then you got to win the games against Arizona, who you're battling with, Vancouver, again, Colorado, twice, and then you play Arizona again. So you got to take these games now if you want any chance, because if you fall behind anymore, then, chances aren't looking too good at all. Now, another thing that's keeping the Hawks in this playoff hunt is the fact the Minnesota Wild are just spiraling downwards. So, if that keeps happening, the Hawks keep winning, then maybe they have a shot.
Yeah, so the current wildcard standings, Dallas holds the first spot with 63 points. Minnesota's there at 60, but Vancouver's just one behind them at 59. And then Colorado and the Hawks both have 57. So, yeah, I mean, picking up wins versus, you got Dallas soon, picking up a win versus Colorado on the 22nd. I mean, the cards could fall into place nicely for the Hawks. Mm-hmm. But, they got to go out and win. It's almost, again, like every night is going to be, a playoff atmosphere because they're fighting for their playoff lives. Now, they've won the last 8 out of 9. I mean, they've looked pretty damn good. It started off beating Washington 8-5, and then it was, kind of a snowball from there. They were playing hot. Both Delia and Ward are playing really well. I think Ward's now won his last 5 starts, and I think he's in net tonight too. So
yeah, he's trying to find consistency there.
Yeah, and it's good to see that we're holding on with Ward and Delia. And Crawford said the other day that he could have played tonight if he wanted to, but he's going to get a couple more practices in for timing. So then that is a situation where I guess Delia's got to go back down to the minors, but we're still a little bit far away from that. But yeah, I mean, the Hawks got Columbus tonight. Columbus is not an easy pass. So, again, yeah, I mean, if you can't afford to lose two in a row, because you lose two in a row, then all of a sudden you're down at the bottom of the wild card with, Edmonton and the Kings. It's crazy to see that, somebody really hasn't fallen off yet. Maybe Anaheim does. They haven't been, playing well at all lately. They just fired their GM. No, they fired their coach. Their GM's now their interim coach. But maybe they could take a tumbleweed down to the bottom of the standings pretty soon. I mean, they're only 1 point behind the Kings for last in the conference. But that's the hope for the Hawks too, is that some of these teams just start to tumbleweed, to the bottom and to the bottomless pit of the league, and then you have a little more breathing room. But I mean, losing back-to-back games, is going to be crucial that the Hawks avoid, because back-to-back losses is really going to hurt them, and then who knows what kind of a hole you're in. I mean, that loss to Boston the other day, all of a sudden, I think they went from like maybe 2 to 4. And while it doesn't seem like that big of a jump, I mean, it is when the bottom of the conference is this crowded.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's one of those weird things where you're close to the first overall pick. I shouldn't say first overall pick, but among the lottery in the Western Conference as you are to the playoffs. It's kind of it's weird, but that's just how the Western Conference is. It's very top heavy with a lot of mediocre competition in it.
Yeah. So again, the Hawks are just a couple points out of the playoffs, but that doesn't mean they're going to be buyers. So
Mhm.
the deadline's coming up shortly. The Hawks have some players that they can move, and it might impact some of the chemistry of the lines. Then you got to fill the guys that you replaced with, either somebody you brought in or someone from the AHL, which could also throw things, to the in the wrong direction, because you got a good thing going now, but then all of a sudden, if you're able to find a suitor for Anisimov, or you're able to find a suitor for Gustafson, then you got to fill those holes. And I mean, Anisimov's been a nice player for the Hawks, but he's not a part of the future of where they're trending. They want to get
Nah, he already hit his peak, I think.
yeah, they want to get younger and faster.
Yeah.
He's already 30. He's got, I think it's around what, 4 million, 4.5 million is his cap hit. He's got a no trade movement, partial. So, some people think it's easier to move him in the offseason when that is waived, and they can talk to everybody.
Right.
But I think Anisimov is like right now at the top of the list of the guys that the Hawks could move. Other guys on expiring deals that could help a playoff team. I mean, I think Kruger could have some value for little in return, just because of he's a bottom six center with who can kill off penalties for a playoff contending team. And I think the prime defenseman who could be moved is really Gustafson, considering that he's the top of the league right now in NHL defenseman in goals. So he's got the offensive skills, but his play on the blue line is not that great. And it wouldn't be a mistake either, Alex, for the Hawks to keep him around, considering his cheap cap hit. And if he's, if you like him as the captain of the power play, the leader at the top of the blue line, then so be it. I'm really not going to be upset with that, because the power play's been rolling.
Yeah, and it's been on an absolute tear, and you are probably going to see some regression in goal scoring. But you know what? Even when they don't score goals, at least they have a power play that looks good. It's not like they're entering the zone, passing, and then not even getting a shot off like we saw, and just getting absolutely just owned. But at least we're now seeing them put together good power plays, even when the power play doesn't score. I mean, that makes a big difference.
Yeah. So I think those three guys are the prime options for the Hawks to move. I think you could get, your probably best value is getting maybe a pick and a player. Depends how high Bowman's demands are for Anisimov, but he's probably the best guy that you can trade for and get some pieces in return. Kunitz is available if you want to move him, but he has a no trade clause, so he would have to get permission to waive that off. I don't know if you would want to do that. And again, his value, you're really not getting anything for him. But I mean, that's about it for the Hawks. They got a couple guys. I think John Hayden's been mentioned in Elliot Friedman's 31 Thoughts as a guy that teams around the league like just because his aggressiveness and he can have a home on a playoff team. Yeah, that's about it for the Hawks in terms of who they could sell off. I think again, Anisimov is a good commodity. I think you could probably get something for Gustafsson, and then if you were to move Gustafsson, that leaves more time open for Forsling and Dahlstrom and Kokek, or how do you say his name? Do you know what is it?
Cuckoo.
Cuckoo, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's not like how it's spelled.
yeah. So opens up time for Dahlstrom, Forsling, Cuckoo, and then there's still plenty of defensemen in the AH. Again, Joey Karu, can he come back up? There's a lot of other guys down there. Campbell, Hillman, remember Hillman from last year? So, there's plenty of guys that the Hawks could give a look. But again, you're not, you don't want to be giving looks to younger defensemen if you're in the hunt for the playoffs.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
it's going to be one of those things where I feel like Stan Bowman's going to look at the roster and say, where is this person going to be a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? And I think there's some pretty obvious ones that we're looking at thinking, okay, they're good, but they're not part of the future. And then there's ones where they're clearly part of the future. So I do feel like Stan Bowman has a decent idea of what those players or where those players are in terms of those statuses.
Yeah, and I think just like my mindset, and maybe it could be the front offices too, or just throwing this out there, is that maybe if the Blackhawks were in like the Kings spot or even lower, they just went on, a terrible losing streak, then we'd be talking more about, all right, it's time to try and find a suitor for Keith. It's time to see if you can get anything for Seabrook. But it seems like right now, I mean, the Hawks can make some minor moves, but I wouldn't really be too shocked if we just stuck the course because we're just a couple points out and everyone's got a roll and, the team's rolling. So,
right.
But again, another guy I failed to mention is another guy who has been coming up. I mean, every year since he's returned to Chicago is somebody who you want to get value for is, you can probably, guess it, Brandon Saad.
Mm-hmm.
Saad's only 26. And again, his contract of around $6.5 million is now a bargain for somebody of his age and his skill, considering all these crazy contracts that are coming out with Matthews and Nylander. So again, it'd be like Keith. Keith can still play top 4 minutes, and he's at a bargain compared to what other top 4 guys are signing for. So, you wouldn't be wrong to take calls for Saad because if someone really gives you a hell of an offer, that you might be hard to say no. But Saad's after this year, I think, has 2 more years on his deal. And if you're trying to, this offseason with all the cap space, if you're really trying to squeeze out one more cup, and as you want to be competitive as you should be every year, then I think Saad's a huge piece going forward for the next 2 years as part of your top 6, even though he's fallen into the third line, these past couple games. But I mean, I'm not for giving up Saad. I still think, he belongs on the top line with Taser, even though right now they're riding Kajula up there, which, I mean, I don't mind Kajula. I think Kajula's giving you nice minutes, but I think he's just a bottom 6 guy in today's NHL. But, they're giving him his run at the top line. He's got some good chances, and he's provided some aggression up there. But, I think Saad belongs with Taze. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, Saad's one of those things where I like him and I like him on the team. I think he's playing really well this year, but I also think they may be considering at least shopping him around and seeing what they could get for him. I think it would be at least worth shopping him, maybe not necessarily pulling a trigger, but kind of seeing what his perceived value is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because you see what his value is now, and if he finishes off the year strong and you want to make another draft day trade or you want to shop him again during the offseason, then the asking price could go up. So no, I mean, a lot of times people say, no one should be untouchable. Especially if you're a bad team, no one should be untouchable because then you can really see what you can get for somebody. But right now the Hawks aren't a bad team. Winners at 8 of their last 9. I like their chances tonight versus Columbus. I just think that offense is clicking, the power play is doing well, and despite how many shots the defense is giving up. I mean, Ward made what 42 saves the other night. I mean, it just the amount of shots has to go down at some point. I mean, he's not getting any help in front of him, and I think part of that too is without Corey Crawford. Everyone talks about how much Crawford communicates out there, and he's the leader of the defense. And then, not saying that Ward and Delia aren't being leaders as well and helping out their defensemen, where they can't see. But I mean, I just think missing Crawford is a huge piece, especially for these guys like Keith, Seabrook, Murphy, guys who have played with Crawford and rely on him for help.
Mm-hmm. You're right. I mean, you said it perfectly right there. I think that there's a lot of chemistry that's going on right now under Jeremy Colleton that wasn't there under Quenneville, and that's when you can start to see some of the perceived value with some of these guys.
Yeah, and that comes with the whole new system. It's finally starting to click after the first couple weeks of the new reign. It was just dreadful. I mean, they started. I thought they really got it going. I thought they were getting a lot better toward the new year, right? Heading up to the Winter Classic. I thought Winter Classic, you're outdoors. Let's have a lot of fun, and I really like their chances versus Boston. But obviously didn't come out with a victory. But you can look at the end of December, and they started to turn things around from that rough start. I mean, they beat Pittsburgh on the 12th, and then they beat Nashville, Dallas, and Colorado. They had a little 3-game win streak going. And then the start of January wasn't good for them, but now they're on this tear. So it took a while for the offense for the system to get clicking, and then that's when, I don't know if you saw the post, but it was in the Athletic. Like, did the Blackhawks wait too long to fire Q? I mean, it makes you think, like, what if they let go of him at the end of last year, and you had Colleton for the draft, and you had Colleton for camp and preseason, and then maybe you didn't get off to such a poor start. But we can talk what ifs all day, but that was just the thought. Made me think a little bit. But it's good to see him playing well. I was never in the so-called like tank talk for the Hawks. I mean, I'm in it for the Bulls because I just don't. There's no way out of that one. But NHL is a lot different because when you got your stars on, it's hard to stop them.
Right. I mean, it's with the Jeremy Colleton thing. I think that when he first came in and you saw the disaster, it was pretty obvious that just the chemistry wasn't there. They were trying to find the right chemistry. The players were starting to get used to Colleton, which, a lot of these players had never played under anyone else but Coach Quenneville, or at least most of their careers were under Coach Quenneville.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think they finally found the chemistry, and I think that says a lot there. Obviously, with the power play, that's a big thing. And just in general, there's a lot of line shuffling. And I feel like there's a good attitude under Jeremy Colleton right now in that locker room from what I've heard.
Yeah, and Colleton's system, it helps out, I mean, the young forwards, like, tremendously. Guys with huge offensive upside. I mean, we've seen what Strom's been able to do. We've seen what DeBrincat. And then, Tays, just worked to revamp his game this offseason. And then Kane's just a freak. I mean, I don't think you need anybody certain to coach him. I mean, he's just been on a tear. He's in MVP talks, and the talk is, does he have to make the playoffs to be considered for MVP? And I would kind of think it trends that way. Just because you're in the you carry your team to the playoffs. There's something to be said there. And if you miss the playoffs, then voting wise, you'd probably say pass because Kucherov's still ahead of him in points. And there's not, the couple guys behind him, McDavid and Udreau. So, it's a tight race for the points lead. But I think Kane has stated his case well enough for MVP.
Yeah, I mean, he's trailing Kucherov by a few points, but Kucherov is mainly assists. I think he only has like 23 goals, which isn't bad. But
I think he's got like 66 or 67 assists. I mean,
because he's playing with all those guys.
Yeah. I mean, you got to share the puck when you're that loaded.
Right. I mean, you got him. Obviously, Alex Ovechkin is leading in goals, but what else is new? But Kane is doing it all. He is scoring. He's getting assists. He's on this point streak. He's doing it all. He really is.
That's right. Most valuable player. You're doing it all around. And
And him being really good helps Jonathan Toews being really good, and Jonathan Toews is doing all sorts of little
Exactly.
things.
Yeah. Exactly. They feed off Kane. Did you see? You watched the game the other night, obviously, right?
Yes.
Kane's goal on the 6 attackers when he came off the bench. That was crazy.
Yeah, thing of beauty. Thing
Yeah.
of beauty.
Yeah. So the point update: Kucherov's at 92, Kane's at 85. I'm feeling another multi-point night for Kane tonight. It seems like that's going to be an every night thing, hopefully. 85 for Kane, McDavid at 82, Udrow at 78, and Rantanen from Colorado rounds out the top 5 at 76. So, again, Edmonton probably won't make the playoffs. So, the Hawks get in, and Kane's right up there with Kucherov. That's going to be an interesting vote. If I had a vote, I mean, that'd be hard to pass on either of those guys. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's Hawks schedule coming up. We got Columbus on Saturday tonight, Ottawa Monday, Detroit Wednesday, and then Colorado on next Friday. And like Alex said it perfectly. There's no room for error. The Hawks got to take advantage of these the teams like Detroit and Anaheim and LA coming up, because those are the games that you beat the guys that are ahead of you and below you. And you start to separate yourself from the field, and you get a better picture of the playoff picture. And we don't have much room before the deadline. But again, like we talked about, the Hawks, if anything, they're going to sell off some pieces. But I could totally see them just sticking the course. They've already done a couple moves this year with getting Strome and trading off Manning for Kajula, which was just just hilarious considering that Manning doesn't really even play in Edmonton. So I mean that was a great job, and that's why we saw Edmonton Oilers, their GM, get fired, just because he was doing a terrible job up there.
I mean, look, say what you want about Stan Bowman, but he's really redeemed himself with some trades in this season.
Yeah,
I mean, he really has.
he
The
fixed
Kajula is
mistakes.
looking really good. Look at Stromey. I mean, is anyone really sitting around thinking how much they miss Nick Schmaltz? I don't think so. He just wasn't the right fit here.
No. And then I was just beside myself opening of free agency, and the Hawks announced they got Ward, Kunitz, and Manning. I mean, I was waiting all morning for, what was it, like when it opened up at 11 o'clock, and those were our 3 signings.
Yeah. Did you ever think they were going to get rid of Manning like this? I didn't.
No, I thought we were going to be stuck with him.
Me too.
But I mean,
same with Jan Ruda.
Yeah, but we got rid of both of those guys. But I mean, yeah, that's why Edmonton, got rid of that guy, got rid of the guy in the office, because you make a move like that where Manning doesn't ruin your cap, but you got a guy who's tying up $2 million who's not going to play. So I mean, that's a waste. Schmaltz for Strome was a nice move. Looks not just I'm sure some of it had to do with Strome and DeBrincat playing together, but you have an opportunity to get a guy like Strome who we all said maybe the old change of scenery would be good for him, and it obviously was. So yeah, Bowman has fixed his mistakes, but again, he's really going to be judged this offseason when you have this amount of money.
Yep.
And there's free agents out there like Mark Stone and Artemi Panarin, and there's really no word if Karlsson loves San Jose or he's going to stay. So why not go get Karlsson? So I mean, it's a nice free agent class. So you're really going to be judged this offseason if you can sign somebody, because I'm willing to throw Matthews money at Panarin. I am. I love the offense production. I want him reunited with Kane, because that was a mistake to let him go. I mean, it really was. Especially, I mean, even though right away I was like, Panarin's gone, but I liked that we got Saad back, because we got a better two-way player at a cheaper price than what Panarin would get in free agency. But you miss the offensive production from Panarin, even though Saad is having himself a nice year. But you would love to get Panarin back, and I'm willing to throw 10.5 at him. That's because with all the space, you want to keep the cup window open. You're not totally blowing it up. You're not the Canes trading away Muzzin. You're not, starting, the snowball downhill. So, the Hawks want to keep it going. Then, you got to pay some guys in the offseason. You're not just paying guys here or there, $3 million, $4 million. You got to make a splash.
Yeah, well, it's gonna be an interesting offseason because I think we all know where the biggest weakness is on this team, and that's defense.
Mm-hmm.
It's also going to be interesting to see what happens with Corey Crawford. We really don't know. Cam Ward is only on a 1-year deal, correct?
Yes, 1 year, $3 million.
Right, and we extended Colin Delia, so obviously they're putting some faith in him in the future, but you're also going to need somebody else. Is it Corey Crawford? Is it somebody else?
Yeah.
If Cam Ward continues to play well, maybe they re-sign him to another 1-year deal next year. I really don't know. But again, that's going to depend on Corey Crawford. I don't know the answer to that, and nobody seems to know the answer to that. But with Artemi Panarin, one thing seems pretty obvious. I don't think he's very happy in Columbus.
No.
So I doubt he's going back there. And, we'll know more about their cap situation when the trade deadline ends, because if we make a few trades and we clear some more cap space, we might have even more than what we project.
Yeah. One name I just want to throw out there before we get into the Cubs talk. He's from the Oilers. Jesse, Puvari. His name has been coming up recently in some talks.
I think it's Payarvi. I think
Payarvi,
maybe I'm wrong.
So maybe the Hawks can do business, because some writers and analysts have said that he's a guy who's the Edmonton's probably going to move on from. He has not had a lot of success this season, but he's a young forward. He's 20 years old. It's not looking pretty right now. This year he's only got 4 goals and 5 assists, but I don't think his playing time has been huge with the Oilers. But that's another nice young piece that you can go out and get, and considering production. But who knows what the Oilers are going to demand. But that's another example of a guy who could benefit from the old change of scenery. So if the Hawks are going to do some moves, why not go find more guys like Kajula, just some younger flyers that aren't going to cost you much, and it just frees up the cap, because some of these guys are still in their entry level deals.
Yeah, the thing with changing scenery is that in the NHL, you see change of scenery really take effect, just because sometimes you have a player that doesn't fit right in the system, and when you find a system that he kind of fits better in, you'll see change of scenery really take effect. I mean, I didn't think Kajula was going to do anything like he's doing right now. And it's not like he's putting up elite numbers, but he's doing little things to help the team.
Yeah. And, comes change of scenery, comes playing with better guys. I mean, Kajula probably wasn't playing with the best guys in Edmonton, considering where they are in the standings. I mean, they're not too far from the Hawks, but the Hawks, if you put Kajula on a line with Taves and Kane, guys that he looked up to as a kid, you're going to see some production. He's got some stick skills. He's got some speed, and he brings aggressiveness to the top line. Taves is going to throw his body around, but Kane doesn't really partake in that. But Kajula's generated some chances for both himself and for other guys. So yeah, change of scenery. You're playing with better players.
Yeah,
you got a new system, and especially Kajula coming into a system, with Colleton, who wants to play fast and get D-man active in the offensive zone. It's going to do him well.
Absolutely. I also think that when you look at the Blackhawks roster moving forward with guys like Kajula, one of your biggest problems has been the past, 2-3 years is they haven't had that depth that they've had in their cup runs. Because let's face it, if you want to win a Stanley Cup, you need depth. You remember all those guys, down on the lines that even like guys like Michael Handzus and
I can name them all. Handzus, Versteeg, Vermette, Brad Richards.
Richards.
So many guys that they didn't put up big numbers, but they were pivotal parts because they were depth. They killed penalties. They they gave you bottom 6 minutes. I mean,
Remember
Vermette,
Brett Sopel and John Madden on the
yeah,
2010
exactly.
team?
Those guys aren't stars, but you need those guys because they're a step up from throwing an AHL guy out there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, maybe one of the things that Stan Bowman is trying to do, in addition to getting younger, is just finding some of those right depth guys here because you need them.
Yeah.
You absolutely need them. And I mean, he tried to sign a veteran in Chris Kunitz, and Chris Kunitz really has had a very good career. But at age 40 now, that's not the depth you're looking for,
Mhm.
especially now.
And looking back, you were able to get guys like Vermette and
Yep.
Oduya because you were trading away young pieces. But now, get all these young pieces and build your own depth. I mean, that's what you have to do. You're not competing for cups, so we're not selling off Kajula. We're not selling off guys like Strome for guys who are going to help us win a cup. We're not in that position. So we're in a position now. We're rebuilding, and we're putting out the new face. We're putting together the new players when Taze and Can are gone. DeBrincat, guys like Strome, and hopefully Yokiharu and Boquist and Barnett from Penn State. Those guys are hopefully your next core of guys. So it's good. It's good that they're competing. I'm not in the tank talk, and it's good to see these young guys really stepping into the role. I mean, Cahoon's another guy. So they've found some chemistry with these young players, and it's clicking right now. And it looks like it can be clicking into the playoff spot.
Cahoon is another player I wanted to talk about. He looks like a very solid depth guy on our hands. You saw the game he had against Detroit. I'm really starting to like him.
Yeah, and that's a nice line with DeBrincat, Strome, and Cahoon. I mean,
Mhm.
Strome is probably the slowest guy on the line just because he's never been known for his speed and explosiveness, but he's got some great ice vision. I mean, that one pass he had to DeBrincat a couple games ago where he didn't even look. I mean, he just knew where he was. I mean, that's just fabulous.
Absolutely. I really think that he's going to be something that's going to be important as we go forward, a very important depth piece. It was a good find by them.
It was.
You know,
It
it,
was.
you identify some players, and you see guys like David Camp and John Hayden, and they're easily replaceable, but you got guys like Cahoon and Kajula who are legitimately sticking out.
Yeah.
So, there's another opportunity to kind of identify what's going on. And, I would like to see a guy like John Hayden, maybe step it up. I shouldn't say step up. He's inexperienced. He doesn't have that much playing time, but, right now he is replaceable, but, he's only 24 years old. So, if he ever becomes something of value, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying he's bad. It's just you don't see as much of a productive presence as you would in some of the other younger depth pieces they have.
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Columbus tonight, 7:30. Was really hoping to go to the game tonight, but man, those prices just they kick your butt, man. I'm not paying $100 to sit in the 300 level. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I tried to get tickets. I didn't really try that hard, but I looked at tickets for the last game against Detroit last Sunday, and it was on StubHub for. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for the Bulls, you have a better shot. You have a better chance of getting some nice seats for cheap because just the ticket prices are just so skewed.
Wasn't it $6 the other day against the Grizzlies?
Yeah.
People got like $6 tickets to see Joakim Noah again.
Yeah,
That's really the only reason people went was to see Joe.
Yeah, but I mean that's a fun time. That's why I go. I was at I went to the Bulls game the other was it on Monday versus the Bucks. I was going more to see Giannis more than I was going to see the Bulls because
Sure.
You want to see the superstars.
Question for you. Were there a number of Bucks fans in the stands? Because I know for many years, and I was part of this, when we would play in Milwaukee, Bulls fans would absolutely take over the Bucks arena. Now the shoe's kind of on the other foot where the Bucks are the much better team. I was just curious if their fans traveled well at all.
Oh, they did. I mean, they did. When he got introduced, it felt like a home game in Milwaukee, to be honest, just because the stadium wasn't full yet. But he got a nice ovation.
Do you think it was a combination of Bucks fans and Bulls fans just wanting to see the guy play, or do you think it was just Bucks fans?
I think it was majority Bucks fans. I mean, there was a lot of I saw some Greek flags. I mean, there was a good Greek presence for the Greek Freak.
Well, I should have gone that night
Yeah,
then.
and so that was fun. I mean, it was fun to see. It was fun to see the Bucks, and Otto Porter didn't play well. Otto Porter, he's played well with the Bulls, and I've liked what I've seen from him. He's not just he's not just a shooter. He's going to create his own shot, or he's going to take it in, and he's playing some defense. But
I'm so torn with him. Do you know why?
why?
Because he's making a lot of money. His playing well can hurt the tank, but I feel like I like him on this team moving forward. Like,
Yeah.
I want Zion so bad, and I think it's pretty obvious to me we're probably going to not luck out on that.
Mhm.
But, it's like, he may be helping us win games, but dang it, I think he fits well here, and in the future, he could be a very good asset on this team.
I mean, and it's not like he's taking away points from everybody else. I mean, look at
No, of course not.
look at the other night in their versus the Grizz. I mean, Robin Lopez had what, 12. Markkanen had a nice game. Levine contributed. I mean, there you go. That's 4 starters in double digits. So, Porter is not taking all the shots. So I think it really can work out. But again, if you don't get Zion, then and I don't think Dunn is the point guard anymore. I just his play has been good, and I just kind of
There's nothing about him that overly impresses me.
no, and I'm just kind of phasing him out. So I think
Yeah.
Dunn's out, and what? So if you miss out on Zion, you might miss out on Barrett too. But if you can get Jay Morant from Murray State, Pags was at the game the other night, and he had I think 37 points, had a couple blocks. I mean, he's just an explosive kid. So then what's wrong with that? You draft your future point guard that you thought you hadn't done, but this guy's a lot more athletic, and he's a much better scorer.
Absolutely. I think that maybe he just needed a change of scenery. We're on this whole thing about talking about change of scenery. I think that's kind of what Otto Porter needed as well.
Yeah, I mean, he was behind Wall and Beal, and I think now he sees that, there's not stars like Wall and Beal on the Wizards where he's constantly feeding them the ball. So he's going to take his shots. He's going to share the ball with Laurie and Levine, and he can be a little more aggressive on this team.
Yeah, for sure. And the Washington Wizards, the Bulls may be a dumpster fire, but the Washington Wizards, while not as big of a dumpster fire as the Bulls, they're kind of in a weird spot too.
Yeah,
Things seem a little jumbled there.
They've always just been a mixed bag. Like, are they going to be the top team in the East this year? Yeah, we'll see. They never really pan out. Like, they're going to give you trouble, but are they going to give you enough trouble?
And are they ever going to be bad enough to get a top 3 pick? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, the rumors of trading Wall and Beal were short-lived. I thought Beal was a much better piece to move just because Wall has that max contract kicking in. But, they're rolling with Beal and Wall, so we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as we wrap up the show, we'll get a little Cubs talk. We spent more time in the Hawks than I thought, but the Hawks are the hot topic of conversation in Chicago right now because from what went from being last in the league is now a possible playoff team. So Cubs started spring training. What was the first day of pitchers and catchers workouts? Was it Wednesday?
Tuesday or Wednesday, one of the two.
Yeah, so that was first day. Position players will be there next week. So things are going to start coming together. The Hawks got the Cubs, who was they signed another left-handed reliever the other day, right?
Yes, that was Xavier Cedeno.
Yeah, and I saw he played with the Sox last year, right?
Yes, he did. He played with the Sox and I think the Brewers.
Yeah,
he did both.
ERA was under 3.
Mm-hmm.
So, someone who can maybe fit there. I knew the Cubs, looking at the bullpen a while ago, they do need another lefty in there. Just they have a lot of righties, and you got to be able to play the matchup with righty lefties. So, you're gonna need a balance there. So they brought him in. His contract is not guaranteed, so it's not it's a low risk, high reward kind of thing. But, they did hint at that in the state of the Cubs with Theo, that he did hint at maybe they were going to add another reliever, and they did. So it brings in more competition in camp. But I mean, the big thing right now at a Cubs camp, Alex, is Addison Russell, and he talked to the media.
Yeah.
He talked to the media the other day, and the 2016 World Series star has now been under heavy controversy because of the um, the whole scandal and the abuse, and he's now he's now getting help for it. And as you said, and as I've read, it seemed like his answers were robotic, and really didn't come from deep down. So right now the reviews out on Russell as is he really working toward it? Does he really feel sorry? But our stances on Russell is going to be different. My stance on Russell is, you know, I'm glad the Cubs kept him around. I'm glad they just didn't throw him away and said, go fix your problem yourself or go find another team who's willing to help you. Theo and Jed and Joe and Ricketts, they all had the right frame of mind when saying, you know what, this happened under our watch. Russell was on our team. He's part of our family. I want to help him out. And I'm glad they did that. He's serving his suspension, and the Cubs have really been helpful in turning around. I mean, so I was really glad they did that, and I think that as long as everything goes well, that he'll be back on the field in a Cub uniform, whether people like it or not. Or who knows if the Cubs just say suspension's up, we got a deal in place, we're gonna get him off the team because even though he's on the field and if he's playing well and he's batting well and he's helping the team win, Alex, there's the thing is he still going to be a distraction?
This is, obviously a very, very, very touchy subject. And, right now, I think they made their decision to extend him an offer, a contract. They tendered him a contract, which may or may not be agreed on by a lot of people. But, all we could hope now is that changes are made for the better and that the family, his ex-wife, can find closure and be able to, recover. And what's best for the victim is what's most important here. So, if all the right things do happen, that's all we can hope for right now. In terms of the future, who knows what's going to happen? I think chances are he's going to be playing on the Cubs when the suspension is up. He could be traded at some point. Maybe he's released if the rehab isn't going well, because this isn't a decision that's going to be made in spring training. It's going to be made after the 40-game suspension. I could see him playing on the Cubs for a while and then being traded in a package. So I don't really know what's going on. It's just going to be one of those time will tell type things.
Yeah, I mean it really is a very touchy subject when you're thinking about it, when the Cubs are thinking about it, your views on it. You don't know what you want the Cubs to do with Russell. You want him to be here. We've seen, fans fall in love with Russell in 16 and the season he had, and they were always behind him with his struggles. And then, the news came out, last year about the the accusations against him. So then that, turned into a whole fiasco. And then, this offseason that will be handed down the suspension, and, Russell's been dealing with it, but again, like, when he returns to Wrigley, I would say the fan base is probably not going to be too welcoming. And,
Yeah, I doubt it.
part of that is, the decisions he made. So it's going to be a touchy subject all through the start of the season, through spring training. There's going to be a lot of questions, and I'm sure once position players fully report next week and they get into practices, I'm sure everyone's going to be asked about Russell.
Yeah.
Especially the leaders, Lester, Rizzo, Bryant, Hayward, all those guys who are
Yep.
leaders in the clubhouse. The easy questions, what is your stance on Addison? He's been out there with players right now working out, and I'm sure as we haven't, we're not out there, but I'm sure there is maybe some discomfort. I'm sure there's these guys have all been best friends for the past couple of years and fighting for the playoffs and winning the World Series, but something like this comes up. We can't imagine what's going on right now in the Cubs organization. And Theo, Jed, and Joe gotta figure it out. And I'm sure the players have, their own thoughts and how they're working toward it. And then, now the Cubs are making it mandatory for for coaches and players to take mandatory class on harassment and all that. So it is become a part of the Cubs, and it is a distraction whether you like it or not. Just because the Cubs are now in. I mean, they're asked to win now more than ever. Joe was in his last season. Um, they have the core guys in place. Yu Darvish is healthy and ready to go. So, you think that winning would be the best way to, disregard that distraction. You got to win. It's time to win, or, other things start to pop up.
Right. It's again, it's very difficult, and you got to ask yourself, is it really worth keeping someone like that on the team if depending on how things go. I'm sure they're monitoring it very closely. I think they're very sincere when they want to try to make him a better person, but you know, he's got to do it himself, and he's got to be sincere about it as well. So we'll see.
Yeah, and the Cubs fan in me is pulling for Russell to, get his mind right, get his life in order, and take his classes and his recovery and his suspension head on, and come back and you want him to come back, and if he's got to roll with the team, then so be it. But then you take away the fan in you, Alex, and you realize that this is not something that should be taken lightly. And the team that you cheer for, is he going to march back out there with Cub logo on the front of his chest? And are you going to support that? Because you don't want you don't like seeing that on your team from possibly one of your favorite players of the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what makes things so difficult.
Yeah, so it's going to be tough. He'll be out there in spring training, so from a player's side, we'll see how he is as a player. But again, there's going to be a lot of questions of how he's changed as a person. I'm sure players are going to come out and support him, and we're going to get some thoughts from them. But the big thing is, it's how is he going to be during his suspension? There's going to be questions through his suspension to Joe. I'm sure Theo is going to address it. Just the state of Addison Russell, how is he doing? Because it's not about baseball anymore. It's about off the field, and if he handles that, then he'll have another shot to play baseball with the Cubs again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be something that's going to be watched closely, and he knows he has all eyes on him. And it's an unfortunate situation that it happened to to our team, to one of the guys that we've loved through the past years, and being one of the best defensive shortstops in the game, and helping our team win the championship that we've always waited for.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be tough.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that will bring us to the end. Again, Alex and I talked about the Hawks playoff push, the schedule coming up. Seems to be in their favor, right, Alex? So it's it's time to go back on another streak, and like we agreed on, losing back-to-back games is not what you want, and losing 3 in a row could be really devastating considering how close the bottom of the conference is.
Yeah, I mean, to dig themselves out of the hole that they put them in, they're going to have to pretty much play flawless hockey throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, and if Bowman decides to move some pieces like an Isimov or Gustafson, or who the hell knows, if some big deal comes in place for Saad, then then you lose some guys, then you got to replace them, and then the chemistry might not be the same, and all of a sudden you're back at the bottom of the league. So it's going to be an interesting next couple of days for the Hawks on the ice and off the ice, with some talks in the front office. And then we also hit on who the Hawks can maybe pick up. There's Jesse Puvari from Edmonton, who is a 20-year-old forward who could, use one of those old change of sceneries.
Mm-hmm.
And, it depends on what their asking price is. But there's another guy who could, you throw him with Taze and Kane, and you could really see what happens. It looks like the Hawks have done that in the past. They've put now Kajula. They've put Hayden up there with Taze and Kane, I think, just to try and bring the best out of players. And when you put guys next to Taze and Kane, I mean, they look pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's another thing the Hawks could explore, is getting somebody like Pavari, or getting another 21-year-old like Strome, who could benefit from that change of scenery. And then Alex and I just hit on the Cubs. Add another lefty to the pen. He'll compete for a job. His contract's not guaranteed. Cedeno, so he'll be in the mix. Position players report next week. And we touched on, the touchy subject that is Addison Russell. So, it's a tough conversation for us to have. It's something that, it's uncomfortable for us to talk about, knowing that what we know about Russell and, a player that we've enjoyed watching. So it's not something you want to be talking about. It's just something you don't want to be talking about. It's plain and simple.
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, thanks everyone for tuning in to another edition of the Windy City Chronicle show. Alex, as always, great time chatting with you.
Always a pleasure.
We'll catch you next time, everybody.